but I received a letter from a granddaughter of a member of the Greatest Generation. And she wrote in that letter, and I'm paraphrasing, my grandfather never talked about the war to us or anybody else in our family, but his request when he died was that he be buried with his blanket that was made at Faribault Mill because it walked with him through some of the darkest days of his life. Wow. And I share that with our employees, and I mean, goosebumps, tears were everywhere. And I really think it kind of tells a story of our company and our longevity of kind of what we do. You think about a blanket and it's a consumer product, but it really has a lot of meaning to a lot of people, and we take that very seriously.
Hey everyone, it's Arick Wierson with another episode of Leverage Storytelling presented by Thunheim. I am here with Ross Widmoyer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Arick. How are you?
Thanks for coming in the studio.
Thanks for having me today.
Now, your claim to fame, obviously, is that you are the CEO of Faribault Mill, which is like one of the most sort of storied manufacturing companies in the United States, obviously here in Minnesota, but I think across the country. But before we get into Faribault Mill, I want to talk about you and your story and how you got to where you are today. So why don't you just give us the quick sort of cliff notes in terms of, who is Ross? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I, like most people, I didn't grow up dreaming of being a blanket salesman. So I had a little bit of an interesting journey to get to Faribault. So, I'm born and raised in Minnesota, not an uncommon thing, as you well know. But I had an appreciation for the mill, even as a little kid, knowing that they made exceptional blankets.
Is that true?
It is true. I actually,
I never heard of Faribault Mill when I was growing up.
I actually slept. It goes into this. So I graduated from the University of Wisconsin, which is where my dad went to school. My mom or my grandmother lived in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and every time we would go down to La Crosse, Wisconsin, I would sleep in my grandmother's basement. It was cold. Wintertime, and I'd sleep under a Faribault Mill blanket, nice. Even as a kid. So who knew that one day my path would lead me to Faribault? It was destiny. It's exactly right. So I was actually a political science major in college. I had a BS in political science, which my dad said was a very fitting degree for the major. I
got one of those too.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do as a political science major? You think you're going to go to law school. So I applied to law school, was waiting to hear back from a couple of schools, but had an opportunity in 2000 to join a financial firm, Piper Jaffray. And at that time, it was the heat of the tech boom, and they were just looking for bodies with reasonable people to fill up the spots that they needed to do the work. And so I had an opportunity to join them, decided to forego law school for 1 year, but always planned to go back. I started as a financial analyst, and 1 year turned into two turned into three, eventually 5 years. And I decided not to go to law school, go to business school instead. And I did that. And after business school, wanted to do something related to general management. I knew I wanted to run something someday. So I had an opportunity to join Target Corporation. I love consumer products. I still do. And spent 7 years there before reconnecting with a mentor of mine at Piper Jaffray, a guy by the name of Paul Grangard, who was running another consumer company, smaller consumer company, out of Port Washington, Wisconsin, called Allen Edmonds, the great American shoe company. Yeah, and, he was leading the turnaround of that business. It was a business not dissimilar to Faribault Mill. Had been around since 1922. A great story, great product, great heritage brand, but needed, some fuel in the tank to get it, out of the garage and onto the highway. So he led that turnaround. I joined him for the second half. We opened 40 retail stores across the country in that 3-year span, and it was a great run. We sold it to a strategic out of St. Louis. I knew I didn't want to move to St. Louis, so Paul and I had talked to each other after a while and enjoyed working with each other. We started a menswear company focused on made in America manufacturers, and that was really a passion I developed when I was at Allen Edmonds and still have today, obviously at Faribault, is made in America manufacturing. So much of it has gone offshore, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit here later in the program. But we really wanted to celebrate those who were still making here in the United States. And so we started a company called Circle Rock. It was focused on made in America menswear categories. So we sourced a number of different products, but knew that, it was moving along, but we really wanted to accelerate the growth of our company and the growth of our business. So we had an opportunity after a conversation with Paul Moody, who was running Faribault Mill at the time. This is 2019. and he was looking for a new path forward. And we said, look, we have the experience, we have the team, we have the strategy from Allen Edmonds, you have the brand and the assets at Faribault Mill. How about we put these two companies together and see what we can do? So we did that, and we got that deal done February 4th of 2020. About 6 weeks before this little thing called COVID-19.
Sure.
And that was the start of our journey at Faribault Mill.
That was a birth by fire.
It was birth by fire, but we were very fortunate, and you've been down there, so you know, we have a long-standing relationship at Faribault Mill with the U.S. military. We've been making blankets for the U.S. military since before World War I. And, you know, that contract business really was a source of reviving the mill after it shut down for a 2-year period between 2009 and 2011 and helped sustain
and before that, it basically had been, I think, was it 1865 that it was started?
The company's been around since 1865. We're proud to be the longest standing manufacturer in the state of Minnesota, which is really cool. I tell people that we've been making blankets since Abraham Lincoln was president, which isn't technically true, but don't let facts get in the way of a good story, as you know.
They never do nowadays.
They never do, especially nowadays. But the company was started in May of 1865, just a month after the Civil War ended and Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. But we're celebrating our 160th year this year, which is really cool.
Now, you just told me just a terrific story about how you landed, but also why don't we just sort of open a parentheses and tell me briefly, without we don't need to do the deep dive, but tell me about Faribault Mill.
Yeah. So Faribault Mill, we're one of the last 2 vertically integrated textile mills left in the United States today. It's us and a company called Pendleton Woolen Mill out in Oregon that a lot of people have heard of. Company's been around since 1865. We've been making high quality artisanal blankets the old-fashioned way for 160 years. And this company has been through a lot of ups and downs, as you can imagine, through the tidal wave of offshoring that occurred in the 80s and 90s. The company actually shut down for 2 years between 2009 and 2011. But we're up and running and experiencing a significant renaissance at the company today, which we're excited to be a part of.
And it's kind of become, one of these great symbols, kind of almost like Ralph Lauren sort of became sort of like the tantamount with Americana, celebrating all the great things about America. Like Faribault Mill sort of is in that same sort of ecosystem right now, right? It's like it's on Yellowstone. I saw you that.
Harrison Ford had our blanket, on Yellowstone, and I mean we
and it really is a truly American story, right? Because I mean, I remember in the article I was researching. I learned that, almost all of your employees live within 10, 15 miles of the plant.
Yeah.
I mean, almost all of your sourcing comes from the U.S. in general, a little bit of this from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Get those Kiwis out of there. And as a result, the company has largely been insulated from all this turmoil with the tariffs, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, we are a made in USA manufacturer, and almost our entire supply chain is domestic as well. So, we were doing onshoring before onshoring was the cool thing to do. And I tell people this all the time, and it goes without saying, we're making exceptional artisanal product with real people in a real place. And the story is so rich because it's truly authentic, and it's been written over a 160-year period. And in today's environment, as you mentioned, it's insulated us from a lot of the turmoil that's occurred in businesses,
now,
especially those.
Do you feel that you're the exception to the rule, or you're a sign of what is possible for U.S. manufacturers and businesses?
I think both. I mean, the truth of the matter is we are an exception to the rule. We're one of the last 2 doing this in the United States. The Federal Reserve in the Twin Cities or Minneapolis put out a report talking about just the industry's hardest hit by offshoring. Textiles was number 1 in the United States. So we've certainly bucked the trend as we continue in operation, are thriving today. But I also think we are an example of what can be done. And it's not only a commitment to making things here, but it's also having the support of our employee base, the community, everybody coming together to support an enterprise that's doing good work, in places that really need the work.
I'm going to ask you a bizarro question right now, a little bit. I know where your mind's going. It's not going there. But let's talk about a blanket.
Yeah.
A blanket's a very special piece of apparel. I don't know if you call it apparel, but it's it's a textile. It's something that comforts you. It keeps you warm. And talk about the blanket as a central sort of protagonist in your story and in the Faribault Mill story. I think that's kind of an interesting thread.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no. Yeah, maybe a little. No, a blanket is all about warmth and comfort. And if you think about our story over 160 years, we've survived 2 world wars, coming out of a civil war, ups and downs in the economic market. That blanket, that warmth and comfort has been consistent all the way through the 160-year period. And a story I like to tell is one that really moved me when I first came into this role as CEO. I told you earlier we have this relationship with the military, U.S. military, and if you go down to our tour room, you can see blankets that were carried in World War I by soldiers, in World War II that have been donated to us. But I received a letter from a granddaughter of a member of the Greatest Generation. And she wrote in that letter, and I'm paraphrasing, "My grandfather never talked about the war to us or anybody else in our family, but his request when he died was that he be buried with his blanket that was made at Faribault Mill because it walked with him through some of the darkest days of his life."
Wow.
And I share that with our employees, and I mean, goosebumps, tears were everywhere. And I really think it kind of tells a story of our company and our longevity of kind of what we do. You think about a blanket and it's a consumer product, but it really has a lot of meaning to a lot of people, and we take that very seriously.
So if Faribault Mill is a book, let's say it's got 20 chapters, what's left to be written? What's coming in? What's next in the story?
Yeah, we think there's a lot to be written.
Chapter 1 or 2, or were you?
We're 160 years in, but we think we are in chapters 1 and 2. We think this company has incredible legs because we've been making.
Better than chapter 11, by the way.
Yeah, it's better than chapter 11, although that was part of the story for a little bit. But we think that we have a real opportunity to take, what's been built over 160 years and be evangelists for this brand and for this story, not only here in the state of Minnesota, not only nationally, and we're doing that work right now, but we think eventually internationally. I tell our team all the time, our work will not stop until there's a Faribault Mill blanket in every household in the United States and eventually around the world. But I'm just amazed when I talk to our customers, and it's one of the privileges I have in this job. We have a maniacal following. Those of us who know these blankets and know how they're made, the care, the craftsmanship that goes into them, the fact that they last the test of time and can be passed from one generation to the next. Those who get it freak out about this brand. We just need to find more of those people, in the United States and around the world, and that's what our team's working on right now.
What is it about the sort of the avid, fanatical consumer? Is it just that they really love the quality and the craftsmanship, and they love the history? Is the fact that it's American? I'm sure you're going to say, well, it's all of the above.
Yeah.
But I mean, what have you found as you looked at the consumers that really sort of love what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, the story is one thing, but we have a saying at the mill, it's all about product. So it starts with the product and what we put into it. We use the best materials we can find. Almost all those are sourced, by the way, here in the United States. And then it's just the hand craftsmanship that goes through a blanket. I didn't know how a blanket was made before. I thought you just had, before I joined Faribault Mill, I thought you had some fabric, you cut it up and you package it up and sold it. I mean,
I thought they came from Santa.
Yeah, they do. And actually, Santa's been very good to us, over the holiday period. But it takes over 20 unique steps to make one of our blankets. And you've been on the tour. I mean, you see it. We oftentimes get about 3,000 people who come through our mill every year. And I encourage anybody who's listening to this podcast to call us up. We'd love to give them a tour. But we have 3,000 people that come through, and everybody usually starts by saying, how can you charge $200 for a blanket? And then they go on the 45-minute tour that represents every single step in the process to say, why are you only charging $200 for one of those blankets? So I think, it's all the above, as you say, or you said before, but it really comes down to we make the best blankets in the world. And frankly, if we didn't make the best blankets in the world, we would have been out of business a long time ago.
Now you've kind of bucked the trend. A lot of manufacturers, retailers, vertically integrated companies are actually raising prices
Yeah.
to combat tariffs, you've actually lowered prices in some cases, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a culmination of the work that's been done over the last 5 years since we got going right before COVID-19 changed the world, and it's really a testament to our ownership group and our investment group, as well as our employees. I mean, so we knew when we got down there right before COVID hit that we needed to modernize this facility and not only take it from the 19th century into the 20th century, but eventually into the 21st century. So we made a multi-million-dollar investment using primarily private dollars in the facility to bring new equipment to basically ensure that our team was spending more time making product than fixing machines. And as we've done that, we've continued to grow employment. Our employment's up 60% since we started. And those jobs are, as I said earlier, very important to the people in our community. Most people, as you mentioned, live within 10 to 15 miles of the mill. But we made that investment. It's allowed us to make a lot more product. And as we've made more product, our costs have gone down. And rather than pocket all of that, we wanted to pass it on to our consumers who supported us along the way. And that's, the antithesis of what's happening in most consumer spaces today.
How do you, as you look at expanding across the country and ultimately internationally, you're obviously going to need more plant, more people, et cetera.
Yeah.
How do you keep that core essence of what it means to be a Minnesota manufacturing story, particularly one centered in Faribault? I mean, do you think you can just run this global blanket empire out of Faribault, or do you feel like eventually you're going to have to start opening up, overseas and so forth?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one we think about, which is as we get bigger, how do we stay small? One of the benefits I have down there is I know every one of our employees' names. I know their stories. I know who they are. I talk to them about their family and see their kids grow up, which is kind of cool. But right now we're running a 40-hour a week shift. We run 4 10-hour days. We think we have an opportunity with the combination of the new equipment, with the combination of the quality of the team we've been able not only to retain but also recruit into Faribault, that we have a lot of runway left, out of our facility in Faribault to grow into this national and eventually international brand. All the while, we know we need to augment every step of our production with outside suppliers. And so we've really started building that ecosystem, whether it be yarn makers, alternative weavers, finishing houses. We've identified partners, specialized partners, all still in the United States, because Made in USA is a key component of our value proposition, but that will help us scale and help us grow. And as we've said it with our leadership team, we feel just as good about creating jobs in Scranton, Pennsylvania, or Two Rivers, Wisconsin, as we do in Faribault, Minnesota. So we'll continue to do that, and we think with that business model, sky's the limit in terms of where we can go.
One of the things that really I was drawn to when I was down there was the idea of you putting all these sort of iconic images on the blankets themselves. I remember seeing, you showed me one in fact, you gave me one from Lake Minnetonka, and I could actually see where my house was.
Yeah.
And then I saw another one where, I have an apartment in New York where I could see where my apartment was in Manhattan. And I think it's so interesting that you, kind of, although it's a very local story here in Minnesota and Faribault and so forth, but, people that live on the East Coast, they might recognize the lake or the river where they live. And, and where did that idea come from?
Yeah, well, it's a team effort, but I will say that my boss, my mentor, my chairman, Paul Grangard, we always joke, he spent most of his career in finance, and someone once said, well, you're just an old finance guy. And he said, well, I also have spent 20 years running consumer products companies, but when do I transition from becoming a finance guy to a consumer products guy? But he has a great eye for this. And when we got going, one of the things that he really pushed was, let's create products that tug at the heartstrings of our customers. Whether it be your favorite lake or a city you spent time in, or a ski hill you remember fondly skiing with your family, at or with your family. Let's develop products like that. So we had these unique looms down there called jacquards. They weren't being used to develop different designs, but we found an opportunity to create some of these lake maps, state and national flags, products like that really took off. We thought, boy, we think we're onto something here. And it was part of our thesis to take the company from a long-run contract-based manufacturer into a shorter-run, customizable house that serviced its customers primarily through direct-to-consumer channels. And that's what we've been up to over the last 5 years. And getting going. But as I told you, I mean, we have the capabilities. These looms are amazing. We have the capabilities to take a picture of the two of us, send it over to our product development team.
That wouldn't sell.
I don't know how commercial it would be. That's probably why we're on a podcast right now, right, as opposed to TV. But we could take that picture, send it over to the product development team. They could create a file within 20 minutes, send it out to the loom. If we had the yarns, we could start weaving fabric with our images, our faces that are lifelike. I mean, it's really amazing what these machines can do.
Now, I understand today you're sponsored by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. We want to give props to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But anyway, in all seriousness, though, you're on the board of the chamber.
I am. It's the largest business group representing businesses in the state of Minnesota, over 6,000 members, and it represents, which I think is really cool, businesses from Main Street to Wall Street. So a business like Faribault Mill is part of the chamber, as is a business like Target or General Mills.
They're small businesses too.
And
right?
Small businesses, small mom and pop, smaller than ours, around the state of Minnesota, both in the Twin Cities, but also in greater Minnesota. And what it does is it allows the chamber to go up and advocate in a bipartisan manner, nonpartisan manner, on behalf of business interests up in St. Paul, and they're working hard on that right now. And if you've been following local politics, they're working overtime on that right now too.
I don't like to do doom scrolling.
Yeah, exactly. But it's an awesome organization. Businesses, I say this all the time. If you're not a member of the Minnesota Chamber, you should be, because it's a great resources for businesses, small, medium, and large.
When you think about iconic Minnesota brands, right?
Yeah.
And you got sports, you got the Minnesota Twins and the Vikings, of course, and obviously people think about the big companies like the Targets and the General Mills, old school, Ham's Brewery, those kind of things. Where do you think Faribault sits in that sort of echelon of the great Minnesota brands?
Yeah, I think if it's not at the top of the list, it's certainly in the short list, and I think simply because it's been around for 160 years and we're still going. All those brands you name make great product, and product that also, I think, inspire memories that people have with that product, or family members they've experienced that product with. And that's what we do at Faribault Mill. You used the example of the blanket analogy before. I mean, the blankets that have been passed on for generation to generation, I still have memories, as I told you earlier, of sleeping under a Faribault Mill blanket at my grandma's house, and I always look forward to going to grandma's house, and that's a key part of that memory. So, we're in the business of creating great products, but products that stand the test of time. And, the world is full of fast fashion. That's not our lane. We want to be timeless classics that are approachable to the mass affluent. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do, and we still have work to do, but we're chipping away at it.
What's going to come after blankets?
Yeah, so we think blankets is just the start. We've introduced, since we've been there, over a couple hundred, probably 250 new products over the last 5 years. But we think there's a lane in apparel. We think there's a lane in other accessories, and wool is nature's original performance fabric. I mean, it keeps you warm when you're cold, but it also is thermoregulating. It's odor resistant. It's fire retardant, and we think wool is really cool. And in addition to that, we bought a cotton company out in Maine that does out there what we do on this side. So we're all about natural fibers. And there are a number of different applications. So we're in the early stages of testing some of those out, but you're going to see a lot more from us in the coming years.
Final question for you. Talk a little bit about how you look at sort of media, whether it's alternative media like, say, this podcast, or it's being in a major publication, or getting a TV hit in local news, or even global news. Talk about how media sort of helps you think about how to frame the story to a broader audience, one that you couldn't really necessarily reach directly.
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, the story is so rich, and when people hear it, they kind of think, is it really true? Is it really, or is it made up? And we just need more people to hear about the story, and that's why I think some of the media, like the podcast, the article you wrote in the Observer, is way more effective than broadcast media, to be honest with you. I think, when people hear about the story and they check it out, and more importantly, when they get one of the products that we sell in their hands and they feel the quality and they look at the artisanal craftsmanship, that's how we're going to grow this business. So media is incredibly important to how we're going to continue to grow.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being on.
Arick, Great
Take
to
care.
see you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
For Leverage Storytelling, I'm Arick Wierson. See you next time.